started writing on this sheet of paper, and I would write like, you are sober, you're this leader, you have this incredible business, you're a present mom, your wife, or you're an amazing wife, and you're super happy in your marriage, and your faith is strong. And I'm writing all these words on this paper, and then I'm just looking at it, like crying over my Doritos, like, must be nice to be her. I don't know how to do that,
We are excited to sit down today with Stefanie Gass. We met Stefanie when we were speaking at an event in Boise, Idaho. She was a keynoter as well as us. And
totally slayed.
And so excited to share some of her story with you. Here's a little bit of background on her. Stefanie Gass is a Christian business and podcast coach, boundary boss, love that, and seven-figure CEO. She helps women grow their online businesses and make consistent income using podcasting. We need to take a lesson from her. She is the host of a top 20 globally ranked business podcast called Online Business for Christian Women. She believes it's possible to partner with God to create income and impact without sacrificing your family, faith, or buying into the social media hustle. Welcome to the What Could Go Right podcast. We are your hosts, Erik, Orton.
And I'm Emily Orton.
And here we talk about personal growth and sailing. In 2014, we moved aboard a fixer-upper sailboat and bootstrapped a year sailing with our 5 kids, and it changed our lives forever.
We tell the whole story in our memoir, our book, 7 at Sea. On this podcast, we want to help you go from fear to freedom, one adventure at a time. Stefanie, thank you so much for hopping on with us today. I think our listeners are really going to love your story and your insights.
Well, you're welcome. Anytime I get to hang out with you guys is going to be fun. It's going to be a win.
Agreed.
Awesome. Well, I want to make the best use of this time, and I think maybe giving some context by sharing your story of how you came to podcasting, if you're willing, just kind of that whole reversal and rebound trajectory.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been an entrepreneur now for 15 years, full-time entrepreneur. And, I've always been somebody who's been successful. I've been a leader. I was the 7-year-old kid that they put into acting, and I'm bossing around Bob because he forgot his lines, and I'm telling Mary to be quiet because she's the tree, like I've always kind of been this like bossy, big personality. But I think as we all kind of step out into the world and try to figure out what we're called to do, we walk through so many different things and we gather clues all along the way. And it ultimately leads us to the place that we're called to serve. And so that kind of, for me, that journey began about 15 years ago as I got laid off from corporate America and found myself in this crossroad of either getting another corporate job or trying my hand at something different. So I got into entrepreneurship because my mom talked me into joining her in a network marketing company where we were going to sell skin cream together and we were going to become millionaires and it was going to be amazing. And I said, sure, like I have nothing to lose at this point. Network marketing wasn't really, it was making a comeback, but like it wasn't yet all the rage. So we ended up joining this company. This was, 15 years ago. And one thing about me is if you tell me I can't do something, especially Stefanie 15 years ago, I was like, let me prove you wrong. So I remember my now father-in-law, I was newly engaged at the time, and my husband, they're like, nobody actually makes it in those companies. They're Ponzi schemes and like all this stuff. And I said, okay, watch me. So I went full out, like couldn't be stopped. I was working 40, 50, 60 hours a week. I would take calls at 5 a.m, at 10 at night. I was closing deals. Like I would talk to the guy in the mall randomly and get him to sign up because all I had in my mind was this goal of making it in this company. And I did. And it was on the back of hustle, and it was on the back of lots of anxiety and striving and panic attacks and nothing great, but I did it. And I thought that in my head and in my heart, I truly thought that it was going to be worth it because I was going to make all this money. And then I was going to be able to, I'm not sure, like float away into the sunset. I don't really know. So I remember this day, and it's just vivid in my mind. It's 2015. I'm 1% of this company. I'm the top. And, I'm having these panic attacks all the time from all the work. And I was drinking a lot, and I would have these almost allergic reactions to the alcohol. And like all this stuff was going on in my life, and I felt unsettled. And like me and my husband were kind of fighting about this company quite a bit. But I remember like, this is the moment. Like, this is why I've been doing it all. This is why it all makes sense. I'm about to walk the stage in front of 20,000 people. And I got a bonus check in my hands that says $60,000. Like, this is the moment. And I walk up to the stage and like my heart's pounding and like my adrenaline is rushing. And I remember walking up to the microphone and I say the little thing I was supposed to say. And I walk off the stage and I stand there. And my body just goes fully cold. And I realized I was exactly the same. Nothing changed. Nothing was different. Nothing was better. And the only thing I could do was now go for the next big thing because I had already done it all. And so that was kind of this breaking point for me where things really started to fall apart. I've always been a Christian, but I was really far from God at that time. And so I started to pray, like, what is this emptiness? Are you asking me to stop drinking? Like, I didn't understand all these alarms that were going off in my body all the time. And I knew that I needed to be a more present mom and I wanted to be a better wife, but I didn't know how. And I started praying really actively and praying, opening the Bible for like the first time, really trying to fumble my way through it. And everything started to fall apart. And I'm like, wow, like I'm leaning into God, but at the same time, like all these things are messy, right? And dark. And it took about a year for my business to basically unravel. I was making a quarter of what I was a year before. Everything was a mess. And I really got to this point where I was at the end of myself. There was no more success to hide behind. There were no more accolades. There was no more busy and hustle. Nothing I did was making money anymore. I had a newborn and a 2-year-old, and I really got to this place of full surrender. And I started praying, who am I without the success? Like, I just feel like I'm in this empty shell of who I was. And I started to hear all these words from the Lord about who I was. And I started writing on this sheet of paper, and I would write like, you are sober, you're this leader, you have this incredible business, you're a present mom, you're an amazing wife, and you're super happy in your marriage, and your faith is strong. And I'm writing all these words on this paper, and then I'm just looking at it, like crying over my Doritos, like, must be nice to be her. I don't know how to do that, And I remember like being led by the Lord to just start going to this gym. And I couldn't afford this gym at the time, but they had a daycare. And so I went to the gym and I put my 2 kids into the daycare for 2 hours, and I'd open my Bible and I'd work, kind of like fumbling my way through that. And then I'd work for a little bit trying to figure out, what am I going to do now? I don't really know what new business I could start. And then I'd go work out. And this went on for a while. And I started to see some small shifts happening in my life as I continued to lean on God to take these really intentional next steps in like getting healthy and getting sober and praying over how I was going to start this new business. But I wanted to do it with him this time. And so I started to do these lives on Facebook, talking to these other moms at the time about how to grow businesses and get sales online. Because I had done it in network marketing. I knew how to grow and get clients. So I'd have a baby on the hip and my hair would be a mess. And pretty soon these women started saying like, do you coach? And I'd be like, I don't know, God, do I coach? Like I'd feel like a conviction. I'm like, I guess we do. I coach. So I started getting on these calls with these women and I'd help them figure out what their business was going to be. Well, they coined these clarity calls and I started to do them, and money was slow, but it was starting to kind of pick up. And I kept praying like, Lord, how am I supposed to grow this? I have got kids. I don't want to be on the video all the time. I know I'm supposed to help these women, but I don't know how. And I just kept praying and I just kept praying without ceasing. And I had this prophetic dream in October of 2018. I woke up, I had the Spirit of the Lord was so strong, and I saw the words and I heard the words, and it said, start a podcast. And I'm like, a podcast? I was like questioning God. What? Like, that makes no sense. How does that make money? I don't even listen. Nobody listens to podcasts. What is that? I was so confused, but I knew that I had been really praying about what to do. That day, I was obedient in it. Talked about that a little bit before. I got this staticky microphone I had tucked away and I plugged it in. I made some really ugly podcast art in Canva. Do not recommend. And I pressed record. And I just started talking to this woman that I knew was me. And I was really honest with her, and I was telling, I'm struggling. I don't really know what this looks like, but I want to help you guys and I want to find my way. And I just was really honest. I was a little all over the place, but I started pouring out, and I was really, really consistent. And I promised myself I would do it for a year. Well, within that year, I was blown away because the coaching business that was really far and few between before, it passed 6 figures in revenue that year because people heard me on the podcast and they wanted coaching. I would air little coaching snippets on the podcast and they wanted that. And so that grew insanely well. The next year, like I just kept ramping up, and it was incredible. The demand was so much that I was able to increase prices really quickly, until the point of like, this was so incredible, all from the podcast, that something clicked in my head. The podcast is how my women should get clients, how the people I serve should get leads. And then why are people converting so quickly? And I had just these complete breakthroughs in my vision about what I was supposed to teach. And so now it's been 6 years later, and I teach specifically how to grow profitable businesses online using podcasting, because that's exactly what God walked me through, is how not to do it, so that I could learn and be prepared for the way he was going to equip me to teach other people to do it. And it's crazy now. The show is almost 2 million downloads. It's a 7-figure company from the podcast. Like, it's just crazy to see what God can do with your yes, and when you get out of your own way.
Wow, that is an amazing story. I think you did a great job taking us through the lows, the confusion, I love when you get an answer and it's so clear and you've been praying for it and you're like, really? Like, what?
I love, do I coach? God, do I coach?
Do I coach? Are we doing that? Okay. Just like,
Yeah.
who's driving here? And I love that. And just some of your inspiration and obstacles, and like, you're on a journey that is surprising you.
Right.
You know?
Totally.
That's when you know you're not, you weren't like, okay, here's my plan, here's my trajectory, we should be at this point by this time. And you're just like, okay, I know who I'm partnering with, and I trust in that so much that I'm now just going to move forward, and I'm along for the ride. I love that. So thank you for sharing that. I think
You're
our
welcome.
listeners can really relate, and whether we say going from fear to freedom, one adventure at a time. And I'm sure there were multiple adventures, not just growing a business, all along the way, because the list you wrote down was, who is that woman? She's sober. She's a present mom. She's a great wife, whatever that specifically means to you. Did the other things on that paper also become actualized as you were also on this like very clear, I don't want to say data driven, but like a clear path to podcasting success and coaching success that you can quantify, right? Some of those other things you can't quantify. Do you feel like those other things are also simultaneously emerging in your life?
I forgot, like, the best part of that story is when I normally say, and I became the woman on the paper.
Oh, yeah. There's the punchline.
That's the punchline.
Boom.
So thank you for reminding me, Emily, that I forgot my own punchline. Yes, like everything on that paper is who I am today and more. And that is the goodness of God, to remind us that our greatest version of ourselves are within that surrender and that releasing control process that we struggle so much with as humans. And I think that it was such a gift too, for him to be so kind to give me that visual of, this is what we're going to work towards together. So it was nice because I was able to hold on to that. And I wish I still had it, that sheet of paper, for the years and years long journey until today that I've walked through. And I'm not perfect by any means. We all fail, and we all have new things that creep up as idols in our lives. And we constantly work forward and towards the best version of ourselves that can glorify him. But it was nice to have this visual of where I was going and why I was doing all this work.
That's so important. I hope our listeners are hearing that you didn't find the satisfaction in the big checks and the accolades, that you felt like that you were at a low point. You came to a place where you didn't feel like you had control and things were so bad, you were able to say, I don't like any of this. And then getting a vision of what the future might bring. And like you, we also include God in that vision casting process. We're like, you know me better than I know myself. Like, who am I? What am I capable of? What do you want me to do? And having that vision and that you wrote it down. I don't know how many times
The
we've
power
said
play
that
right there.
on this podcast, in our emails, when we speak, we're like, write it down and then going for it. So hopefully those are some of the things people are hearing right now.
One thing I'm curious to know is, do you still eat Doritos though?
I try to choose a healthy version of Dorito because, Red 40. So
Is that a kind of Dorito?
No, that's an ingredient. Like a food color.
Yeah, it's a food additive you want to avoid. So not really, but that's a great question, Erik.
I'm still a Dorito eater, and
my kids are too.
Okay, we all have room to grow, I guess.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm just looking at all the things I wanted to learn from you, and I think you've really done a great job telling us about the inspiration you received. I love how bold you are about that. Just like that is a true source. And your obstacles, lessons, milestones. What advice would you have for people who are navigating some ambitious endeavor?
Yeah.
Maybe they don't have a map, like you didn't.
Yeah, exactly. I think any ambitious endeavor that you're after is going to be absolutely terrifying, because that's what makes an ambitious endeavor worth it in the end, is that you're chasing something that seems out of reach, unrealistic. All of the thoughts and beliefs that come in when we are chasing something big and audacious are just that, thoughts and beliefs. And so one of the things that I've really worked on with myself, as Emily and Erik know, is whatever that next thing is that I know is in front of me, right? Whether it be I'm going to start a podcast or write a book or do a speaking engagement or go sailing or whatever that thing is that like you're so scared to do, you have to really write that thing down. And then all around it, I write down the thoughts and beliefs that I have around this outcome, this thing that I've never even done. And what you will notice is so many of those things that you write down are fabricated or forecasted, future casting, and none of it is actually reality. So I used to be so scared of public speaking, which I think is hilarious because I literally speak online to thousands of people, never have an issue. But in person, I had this story in my head about why I can't do that. And it's going to be a mess. So I did this exercise and I wrote it down and I said, public speaking, I'm scared to do it. Wrote a circle, wrote all the things around it that I thought of. I'm going to have to clear my throat. I'm going to trip. I'm going to forget what I have to say. People are going to think I'm stupid, whatever it was. And I wrote all these things down and I challenged myself, scratch off any of these that that could possibly not be true. So first I scratched off like half of them. Like that cannot be true. I cannot sound stupid, right? I do this for a living. And then I circled the ones that could happen. So what could happen? Well, I could trip. I just make fun of myself. Cool. I could clear my throat. Normal. That would be okay. I can bring a water. And I was left with like literally 3 things that could happen. And none of them were crazy or groundbreaking or going to hurt me in any way. So I actually end up getting a speaking engagement with Emily and Erik at the same place. And it was my first, I would call keynote. Like I've done little stuff, especially back in the network marketing days, which is probably why I had trauma around public speaking, honestly. And so this was like my first real thing. And I remember I went last and I sat and watched you guys, and you specifically brought up this question that never left me. You're going to come talk about it on my podcast soon. And it's the question of what could go right? And I realized that along with a few other things people said was the reason I was supposed to be at that event, was to hear something so simple yet so profound as to what can go right around the things that you're most afraid of. And I realized that those 3 things left on my paper, the beliefs that could maybe happen, were so far underweighted compared to the things that could go right, that for me, I was just holding myself back from the favor that was right outside of that fear. And I think you guys say that too, right? Mm-hmm. What's for you on the other side of that fear? And so the advice that I have in that is to take a look at the beliefs that you have around it, get rid of the ones that aren't truth, circle the ones that could happen, but then ask yourself on the other side of the coin, and this is Erik and Emily's own advice, what are the great things that could come from this? Because that has been something that stretched me and pushed me into some of the new things I've done in the past year that have really catapulted my reach, created amazing networking opportunities for me, given me really cool, just different opportunities within the business space that I didn't even know were a possibility for me. It's all outside of your safe zone. So you have to be willing to go there sometimes.
That is awesome. Do you have any questions, or I just like keep going?
No, I just love that you kind of, this balancing thing that you were talking about, where you say you pile up all the things that are actual likely risks, and then you weigh it against all the things that could go right, and the scales just tip, and it just becomes so obvious. And I love that you've kind of drawn that picture for us of how you were able to chip away at all the things that felt risky, but when actually looked at square in the eye, they withered pretty easily. And then what was left standing was pretty small compared to the potential upside. And that's when Emily and I like to talk about that as the draw of the new vision. Like when you feel so compelled by the new thing and it's so much more fascinating or interesting or exciting than the thing that you have, then you get the courage to move into it.
Mm-hmm.
When we're able to kind of shed all the weight of all those concerns. And I love your circle analogy of just saying, like, what are all my fears around this, and drawing it out and really making it concrete and visual, so then you can then start chipping away, knocking them down.
Yeah. And I think I want to let our listeners know now that Stefanie's offering you a Get Clear on Your Calling workshop. It's totally free. It's only 30 minutes. Do you want to tell them anything amazing about what they're going to find in there?
Yeah, sure. I think if you are in this place of confusion around what is that next thing I'm supposed to be going for, or what is the business I want to step into, or maybe you're doing something, but it feels off. You know that there's a realignment for you or an optimization that needs to happen. This is just a free workshop I put together based on all the years of coaching that I did around helping people get clear on what their calling was so that they could turn it into a business. So this is about a 40 minute training on that. It's totally free. And it's freeclarityworkshop.com. And I just pray that that really blesses you, because it's not so much all the things we can do. That's what brings so much confusion for people. It's what's the thing I'm called to do. And we got to kind of look through that muck and that mud to find it sometimes. And a lot of what I discover with my students is that they're just missing it. They're just looking straight over it, or they're hyper focused on where they want to go instead of where they've been. And those are the clues and the things that we talk about in the training that help you get clear on what you're supposed to do.
I want to ask you one question about that. Is this set up as a one and done, or is it a workshop you could return to when you come into a season of new confusion? Like, well, I did that thing. This sounds like a repeatable. Is that?
Yeah, you can take, this is a recorded training that I've done. So you guys can come in and do that at any time. And then along with my podcast, I have 760 episodes. So you could search for literally anything you need related to trying to grow a kingdom business, trying to glorify God in your work, get clear, actually make a profit online in a way that doesn't suck all your time and hustle. Those are all the things I stand for. And that's a great free resource to start with.
I love it. To me, it feels like a spring cleaning.
Yeah.
Like just come back, just check in, every so often when it starts to feel murky. So thank you so much for offering that to our listeners and to everyone who is fortunate enough to find you in this space. What else? We would love to hear what's next for you, like what's opening up for you, what's emerging, or
what are you excited about?
Yeah,
now?
what are you excited about that you feel comfortable sharing? We don't want to push you too far.
Yeah, what am I excited about now? I'm excited that I'm not building anymore. I feel like the past 6 years, 5 years really, I was building, I was discovering, I was refining, I was learning more as people went through all the offers, and there was, gaps, as there always are. And so we redo stuff and record, and, team transition that happened. And I finally feel in this place of like, everything's been created so well that I'm now finally positioned for the scale and true, serious potential around what we can help women do. And we have men in the community now too, but when it comes to helping them unlock what their voices are meant to be, like, I think of my company as the mission that we have as a company is to really help people use their voices to go out and inspire and teach and cultivate and grow and to produce fruit in their own lives and the lives of others through their voice, which is podcasting. And now it's like, okay, all the small pieces of that puzzle are now put together. And it just feels really good because I'm able to kind of rest in that, right? And the question shifts from what do I create and how do I build and how do I find people to like, okay, it's built. How do I share this on a larger scale and serve more of, more of the world with this stuff? So that's been really, really neat.
I love that. I'm curious if you could give us a comparison between how it feels where you're sitting right now versus when you were on the stage receiving that bonus check for $60,000.
Yeah. Oh, man. The huge difference is that when I was on the stage, I felt so much unrest. The heaviness of the anxiety and the worry and the internal panic that was so heavy. It was like I was walking around with 100-pound weights on my back and on my feet. Versus today, my business is so peaceful. It's so peaceful. Like, it's like I'm floating through my day, like getting to talk to you guys and doing a call with my students that are in my program and like boxering with this team of like incredible kingdom women who have all the same vision and mission. Not to say it's not without some stress, but it is so light. It is so fun. And I'm able to turn my work off at 3:00 every day and be with my family and be with my kids and go on vacations with my family. And it's just the fulfillment that it brings me, knowing that it's work that God created me for. It's just freeing. It's everything.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. I know it will be inspiring to our listeners, and I hope they will sign up for your free class. Check you out. We'll put the links in our show notes. Your podcast is amazing. I love to listen to it.
Yay.
Then gets me a chance to hang out with you. And
Yes.
we always love to, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was
Erik.
going to say, and we're excited to talk again next week on your podcast.
Yes.
So I'm glad we get another chance to hang out.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
So if
So
you like
fun.
this episode, be sure to go over and listen to Stephanie's podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Perfect.
It's amazing.
I love that. I can't wait to have you guys on. Thank you guys so much for having me.
And then we always love to end. I would love to give our listeners a challenge to actually do what you said, kind of write down what it is. First of all, the first writing thing you talked about was, joining with God and saying like, who am I? Who do you see me as? The other one you talked about was writing down that goal you have or that thing you want to do, but you're maybe afraid of, and putting it in the middle and writing all the stories on the outside.
Mm-hmm.
And then crossing out the ones that are made up and unlikely and circling the ones that could happen and addressing those, and then making that list, as we always love to ask at the end of this show, what could go right?
Hey guys, it's Erik. I want to share some takeaways from this trip that I had to the Bahamas in August. It was a fantastic trip, and I just want you to hear from the people themselves that went, what kind of experience they're having on these trips. So I'm going to share one takeaway from one person. Then I also want to fill you in on what's happening with the upcoming sailing schedule. Basically, I'm sold out through this year and the first bit of next year. I'm going to Italy in a couple weeks, and that trip is sold out now. I'm going to Thailand in November. That trip is sold out. January and February are also sold out. But there are a couple things I want to put on your radar. First of all, I am adding actually a new trip. It's going to be December 2nd through the 7th. We're going to Sea of Cortez, Mexico. It's one of my favorite spots. It's a beautiful place. It's easy to get to. It's very affordable. And this trip is specifically going to be kid friendly. So if you've been looking for an opportunity to travel with your kids, I'll say under the age of 16, this could be the right opportunity for you. It's a beautiful place and it's easy sailing, but it's just gorgeous. So December 2nd through the 7th, Sea of Cortez, Mexico. So if you're interested in that, drop me a line. Also, I said that I was sold out for January and February. The only exception to that is I have one spot for one person on a trip to the Virgin Islands, January 27th through February 1st. It's a female spot. It's in a shared cabin. Again, January 27th through February 1st in the Virgin Islands. If you're interested in that, drop me a DM or shoot me an email. Also, although those trips are all sold out, we are going to the Virgin Islands again, March 10th through the 15th. It's going to be a beautiful time of year to be there. It's perfect if it lines up with your spring break or something else that you've got going on at the tail end of winter before spring really gets here. So March 10th through the 15th in the Virgin Islands. Drop me a line, hello@theawesomefactory.nyc, or just DM me on social. Also, we are going to be doing trips to Europe this coming summer. We're going to go to Greece, Italy, and Croatia. I'm not ready to put those dates out there just yet, but if you are interested in those, drop me a line. Would love to get you some priority information on that. So anyway, now that we've gone over that, listen to some of these takeaways from the Bahamas, enjoy, and hope to see you aboard on one of our trips sometime soon. All right, Harlan, man of many words.
Radine supplies the paragraphs. I do the 2 words. So my best vacations are an adventure. I'm not much of a lay around the pool kind of person. And I've been impressed about sort of the adaptability of this experience. You can do hiking, you can do swimming, you can do snorkeling, kayaking, sailing, or you can sit on the front of the boat and lounge. And it really fit everybody's
laugh was good.
Abilities and interests, and jumping off of rocks into the ocean is my idea, but it's not everybody's idea. But there was so many different things, so it's sort of like adaptable recreation. It was just a lot of fun to be able to do so many things.